The conference room aboard the Valkyrie flagship was filled with the soft purple glow of holographic displays. Admiral Kethron stood at the center, his forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the star maps floating before him. His scales, a deep crimson that marked him as high nobility, caught the light as he turned to face his command staff. "Another species claims this region of space," he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute confidence. "They call themselves humans. Our scouts report they have established colonies on 17 worlds within what we consider Dominion territory." Ambassador Thelvar, whose silver scales marked him as a diplomat rather than a warrior, stepped forward. His eyes, large and black like polished stones, reflected concern. "My Lord Admiral, perhaps we should attempt peaceful negotiations first. Our intelligence is limited regarding this species." Kethron's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among the Valkyrie. "Thelvar, your caution is noted but unnecessary. We have conquered 47 species in the last 2 centuries. Our fleet numbers in the thousands. We control more than 300 systems. What could this single species possibly possess that would give us pause?" The holographic display shifted, showing images captured by long-range sensors. The humans appeared remarkably fragile. They stood upright on 2 legs, had only 2 arms, and their bodies lacked any natural armor or weapons. They were shorter than the Valkyrie, less muscular than the Kryn, and possessed none of the natural advantages that marked successful warrior races. "They look soft," Commander Velixis observed, her tone dismissive. "No claws, no armored hide, no natural weapons at all. How did such a species even survive to reach space?" Thelvar pulled up additional data on his personal tablet. "That is precisely what concerns me, Commander. According to our analysis of their public transmissions, humans have been spacefaring for less than 300 years. Yet they have spread across dozens of systems with remarkable speed. Their technology appears advanced in certain areas, particularly in propulsion. And—" "Enough," Kethron interrupted, waving one hand dismissively. "Every species thinks their technology is special. Every species believes they are unique. Then they meet the Dominion, and they learn the truth. Strength comes from numbers, from discipline, from the willingness to dominate. These humans will be no different." The Admiral gestured to the display, bringing up tactical information. "Our forces have been assembling at the border for 3 weeks, 327 warships, including 15 dreadnoughts. We have enough firepower to reduce their colonies to ash. They will see our might and surrender, as all others have done." Thelvar's concern deepened, but he knew better than to push the Admiral too hard. "And if they do not surrender, my lord? Then we will demonstrate the price of defiance," Kethron said coldly. "Send them our standard ultimatum. They have 48 hours to acknowledge Dominion sovereignty over all contested systems and begin evacuating their colonies. If they refuse, we will remove them by force." The message was transmitted within the hour. It was written in the formal style of the Dominion, filled with flowery language about the inevitable march of progress and the benefits of joining the greater galactic community under Valkyrie rule. Beneath the diplomatic words, however, the threat was clear: submit or die. The human response came back in less than 6 hours. Thelvar read it first, his expression growing troubled as he processed the brief message. He brought it to the Admiral immediately. Kethron read the message aloud, his voice dripping with contempt. "To the Valkyrie Dominion, we decline your offer. Human colonies are sovereign territory. Any military action against our citizens will be considered an act of war. We strongly advise you to reconsider your position. You do not understand what you are threatening." End quote. "We considered Ostpingtime." The Admiral crumpled the datapad in one powerful hand. "The arrogance of these creatures. They dare to threaten us? Commander Velixis, how many ships do our scouts indicate they have in the region?" Velixis consulted her tactical display. "Our best estimates suggest no more than 30 vessels, my lord. Most appear to be lightly armed patrol craft and transport ships. We have detected no major military installations, no defense platforms, nothing that would pose a credible threat to our fleet." Then we will teach them a lesson in humility, Kethron decided. We will not wait the full 48 hours. Target the mining colony on the fourth planet of the system they call New Aberdeen. It is far from their core worlds, but valuable enough to demonstrate our seriousness. A surgical strike. We will destroy their orbital facilities and give them one more chance to surrender before we proceed further. Delvar felt a chill run down his spine. My lord, perhaps we should gather more intelligence first. The humans seemed very confident in their response. What if they have what? Kethron turned to face the ambassador fully, his height advantage making the question feel like a physical threat. Hidden fleets? Secret weapons? Delvar, you have been a diplomat too long. You see shadows where there is only the posturing of a weak species trying to appear strong. This is a common tactic. They hope to buy time, to make us cautious. But we did not build an empire by being cautious. The fleet moved into position over the next 30 hours. The Velkhari ships traveled in the standard formation that had served them well for generations. Dreadnoughts at the center, cruisers forming a protective shell, with faster destroyers and frigates on the flanks. It was an overwhelming display of military might, a formation designed to inspire fear and awe in equal measure. New Aberdeen was a human mining colony specializing in rare metals. It orbited a yellow star, similar to the one that warmed the human homeworld. The colony had a population of approximately 15,000, most of them miners and their families. From orbit, the Velkhari could see the neat clusters of habitation domes, the massive excavation equipment, and the 3 orbital processing stations that refined the ore before shipping it to other human worlds. Commander Velexis reviewed the targeting data one final time. My lord, targeting solutions are locked. We can destroy the orbital stations with minimal loss of life on the surface. The electromagnetic pulse from the explosions will disable most of their ground-based technology. It will be a clear demonstration without excessive casualties. Kethron nodded approvingly. Proceed. And ensure our message is clear. This is what mercy looks like from the Dominion. Next time, we will not be so gentle. The Velkhari ships opened fire. Plasma cannons and particle beams lanced through the void, striking the orbital stations with devastating accuracy. The structures, designed for processing ore rather than withstanding military assault, exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Debris rained down into the planet's atmosphere, burning up in streaks of fire that could be seen from the surface. On the ground, alarms blared throughout the colony. The colonists ran for shelters, families clutching each other as the reality of war came crashing down upon their peaceful world. The electromagnetic pulses did indeed disable most electronic systems, plunging the colony into darkness and silence. From the flagship, Kethron watched the destruction with satisfaction. Transmit another message to the human authorities. Tell them, this is just the beginning. Tell them we will return in 72 hours for their formal surrender. If they refuse, we will target a more populated world. But as the Velkhari fleet began to withdraw to a holding position at the edge of the system, something unexpected happened. A new signal cut through all frequencies, overriding the Velkhari communication systems with ease. The voice that spoke was human, male, and utterly calm. Velkhari fleet, this is Rear Admiral Marcus Wright of the United Human Space Forces. You have attacked a civilian colony without provocation. You have killed 42 human citizens. This is an act of war. We are dispatching the UHSF Eternal Resolve to your position. You are ordered to remain in this system and prepare to surrender your vessels. Any attempt to flee or to cause further harm to human civilians will result in the complete destruction of your fleet. The signal cut out as abruptly as it had appeared. For a moment, silence filled the Velkhari flagship's bridge. Then, Kethron began to laugh, a harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. The audacity. They send one ship against our fleet of over 300? They demand our surrender? He turned to his tactical officer. How long until this eternal resolve arrives? The officer consulted his instruments, confusion evident in his expression. My lord, I am detecting unusual spatial distortions approximately 3 light-years away. If these readings are correct, the ship is traveling at... No. This cannot be right. The speed indicated is impossible. Show me, Kethron commanded. The main display lit up with sensor data. The readings showed something massive moving through space at speeds that exceeded Velkari faster than light technology by orders of magnitude. The distortion it created was like a ripple in the fabric of reality itself, a wave of bent space-time that their sensors could barely track. Thelvar stepped closer to the display, his diplomatic training warring with a growing sense of dread. My lord, whatever that is, it will be here in less than 72 hours at its current speed. 3 days, Kethron mused. Let it come. We will show these humans what happens when an inferior species challenges the Dominion. All ships are to remain on high alert. We will meet this eternal resolve with the full might of our fleet. If they want to throw away their ship on a symbolic gesture, we will oblige them. A.T. Over the next 3 days, the Velkari fleet maintained position. Scouts were dispatched to monitor the approaching vessel, but none returned clear data. The closer they got to the spatial distortion, the more their instruments went haywire. 2 scout ships simply vanished when they ventured too close, swallowed by the rippling effects of whatever drive system the human ship was using. Kethron grew more irritated as time passed. How can one ship create such interference? Our sensors are the finest in the Dominion. What technology are they using? No one had answers. The science officers worked frantically to compensate for the interference, to get a clear reading on the approaching vessel. But the distortion was unlike anything in their database. It was as if the human ship was dragging a piece of folded space along with it, warping the very nature of reality in its wake. On the morning of the 3rd day, every sensor in the Velkari fleet suddenly screamed in warning. The spatial distortion had intensified exponentially. Ships rocked in space as gravitational waves rippled outward from a single point. Emergency systems engaged automatically as the fleet scrambled to maintain position. Report! Kethron shouted over the alarm klaxons. The tactical officer's hands flew across his console, his voice rising in pitch as he read the data. My lord, the distortion is resolving. The ship is dropping out of faster-than-light travel directly ahead of our position. Distance: 10,000 kilometers and closing. My lord, the mass readings. This cannot be accurate. On screen. Show me this human ship. The main view screen flickered and then stabilized. What appeared made every Velkari on the bridge fall silent. Even Kethron, veteran of 100 battles, felt something cold settle in his chest. The human battleship emerged from the dissipating spatial distortion like a predator stepping out of shadows. It was enormous beyond comprehension, dwarfing even the largest Velkari dreadnought. The ship stretched for kilometers, its hull a matte black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Along its length, thousands of weapons emplacements were visible, each one larger than a Velkari destroyer. The ship's design was brutal and efficient, with none of the aesthetic curves or decorative elements that marked Velkari vessels. This was a machine built for one purpose: war. As they watched, the battleship's running lights activated, illuminating portions of its hull. They could see the name etched in letters, hundreds of meters tall. Eternal Resolve. Thelvar's voice came out as barely a whisper. Merciful ancestors, what have we awakened? 1. The human ship hung in space before them, silent and ominous. No immediate attack came. No demands were broadcast. The Eternal Resolve simply sat there, its presence alone more intimidating than any threat could have been. Around it, space seemed to shimmer slightly, as if the ship was wrapped in some kind of protective field that bent light and energy. Commander Velixes broke the silence, her voice shaking slightly. My lord, our tactical computers are attempting to calculate the ship's capabilities based on its energy signature. The power output we are reading exceeds our entire fleet combined. The ship's defensive fields are unlike anything in our technology database. And, my lord, we are detecting what appear to be fighter launch bays, large enough to deploy craft the size of our cruisers. Kethron stared at the screen, his mind racing. His pride warred with the growing realization that he had made a terrible mistake. One ship. The humans had sent one ship. But that ship was a monster that made his fleet look like a collection of toys. The communication system activated again. The same calm human voice from before. Valkyrie Fleet. This is the UHSF Eternal Resolve. You are surrounded by weapon systems that can destroy your entire force in minutes. This is your only opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You will be taken into custody and returned to your government, along with our formal declaration of war. Or you can choose to fight, and we will send your wreckage home instead. You have 5 minutes to decide. Choose wisely. The line went dead. 5 minutes. The humans were giving them 5 minutes to surrender an entire fleet to a single ship. The arrogance of it should have been insulting. But as Kethron looked at that massive black vessel hanging in space like a sword of judgment, he felt something he had never experienced in his entire military career. He felt fear. The 5 minutes stretched like hours. On the bridge of the Valkyrie flagship, nobody moved. Every eye was fixed on the massive human battleship that dominated their view screens. The Eternal Resolve simply floated there, patient and utterly confident, like a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. Admiral Kethron's mind raced through possibilities. His entire career had been built on the principle of overwhelming force. The Valkyrie Dominion had always won through superior numbers and coordinated attacks. 300 ships against one should be an easy victory, regardless of size difference. But something about this situation felt fundamentally wrong. Tactical analysis, he ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. Give me options for attack patterns. Commander Velexis worked her console, but her movements were hesitant. My lord, our computers are having difficulty generating reliable attack vectors. The human ship's energy signature is interfering with our targeting systems. Additionally, the defensive field surrounding the vessel is reading at power levels that suggest it could withstand significant bombardment. How significant? Velexis swallowed hard. If our models are correct, my lord, the shields could potentially absorb the combined firepower of our entire fleet for an extended period. Perhaps hours. And that is assuming the field does not have some form of regenerative capability, which our sensors suggest it might. Thelvar approached the admiral, keeping his voice low. My lord, perhaps we should consider their offer. We could surrender, allow ourselves to be taken into custody, and buy time for the Dominion to prepare a proper response. This is clearly not a typical engagement. Surrender? Kethron's voice rose. You suggest I surrender over 300 warships to a single enemy vessel without even testing their capabilities? Do you know what that would do to the Dominion's reputation? Every species we have conquered would see it as weakness. Rebellions would erupt across dozens of systems. Better than losing the entire fleet, my lord, Thelvar argued quietly. If we fight and lose, the result is the same, except we will have no survivors to report what we learned. Kethron turned away from the ambassador, his jaw set. We will not surrender. But neither will we be reckless. Velexis, prepare the fleet for defensive formation. Delta 7. All dreadnoughts to the front. Overlapping shields. We will probe their defenses with a limited strike. Let us see if this human monster can truly stand against Valkyrie firepower. The fleet began to move, ships sliding into new positions with practiced efficiency. The 15 dreadnoughts formed the front line, their shields linking together to create a unified barrier. Behind them, cruisers and destroyers arranged themselves for maximum fire coverage. It was a formation designed to concentrate overwhelming firepower on a single target, while maintaining strong defensive capabilities. From the bridge of the Eternal Resolve, Captain Elizabeth Chen watched the Valkyrie fleet reorganize. She sat in her command chair, a simple, elevated seat in the center of a bridge that looked more like a war room than the decorated spaces common to alien vessels. Screens covered every wall, displaying tactical data, ship status, and views from hundreds of external cameras. Her crew worked in silence. Each officer focused on their station. They are not going to surrender, her tactical officer observed. Lieutenant Commander James Park had served with Chen for 7 years and could read enemy behavior patterns with eerie accuracy. Defensive formation. Trying to feel us out. Expected, Chen replied calmly. They have never faced anything like us. They are operating on assumptions based on their previous conquests. Those assumptions are about to be shattered. Should we fire a warning shot, Captain? Asked Commander Sarah Mitchell, the ship's executive officer. Chen shook her head. No warnings. They attacked New Aberdeen. They killed civilians. They made their choice when they opened fire on that mining station. Now they get to learn what it means to wage war against humanity. She activated the fleet-wide communication. All stations, battle stations, prepare to engage. Rules of engagement are weapons-free on my command. Primary targets are the dreadnoughts. Let us show them what real firepower looks like. In the Valkyrie fleet, sensors detected the change immediately. The Eternal Resolve's power output had just tripled. Energy was flowing to weapon systems that made their sensors scream warnings. The defensive field around the ship intensified, creating a visible shimmer in the space around it. They are preparing to attack, Velixis shouted. All ships, raise shields to maximum. Charge weapons. Wait for my command. Kethron ordered. Let them fire first. I want to see what we are dealing with. What happened next would be recorded in Valkyrie history as the moment their empire learned true fear. The Eternal Resolve did not fire all its weapons at once. That would come later. Instead, Captain Chen ordered a demonstration. A single weapon system activated, one of dozens running along the battleship's port side. It was called a mass driver cannon, though that simple name did not do justice to its devastating nature. The weapon used magnetic acceleration to fire a solid tungsten projectile the size of a small house at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The projectile itself had no explosive warhead. It did not need one. At the velocity it traveled, the kinetic energy alone was equivalent to a nuclear weapon. The cannon fired with no visible beam or energy discharge. One moment, there was nothing. The next moment, a Valkyrie dreadnought simply exploded. The tungsten projectile punched through the ship's shields as if they did not exist, tore through the armored hull, and continued out the other side. The kinetic energy transfer was so massive that the dreadnought broke apart, sections of the ship spinning away in different directions as secondary explosions rippled through what remained. The entire engagement had taken less than 2 seconds. On the Valkyrie flagship, alarm klaxons blared. Dreadnought Valor's hammer is destroyed, Velixis reported, her voice cracking. Total loss! No survivors. My lord, we did not even see what hit it. One moment, it was there. The next, all ships, return fire, Kethron roared. Concentrated barrage on that human ship. Now, the Valkyrie fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, missile volleys, and energy torpedoes all streaked toward the Eternal Resolve in a storm of destruction. It was enough firepower to reduce a planet's surface to molten slag. It was the kind of bombardment that no ship should be able to survive. The weapons struck the Eternal Resolve's shields and simply stopped. The defensive field, which human engineers called a multi-layered gravitational deflection system, used precisely controlled gravity wells to deflect incoming fire. Solid projectiles were pulled off course. Energy weapons were dispersed across the field's surface, their power dissipating harmlessly. Missiles were caught in gravitational eddies and torn apart before they could detonate. Not a single shot reached the battleship's hull. Impossible, Velixis whispered, staring at her tactical display. Our entire fleet's opening salvo, and we caused 0 damage. 0. Their shields did not even flicker. On the Eternal Resolve, Chen watched the display with satisfaction. Their weapons are impressive. For their technology level, she commented. But they are using directed energy and conventional projectiles. Our shields were designed to stop weaponry, much more advanced than this. Should we demonstrate our point defense systems, Captain? Park asked. Not yet. Let us respond to their salvo with one of our own. Target the dreadnoughts. Fire broadside, weapons batteries 1 through 10. Spread the fire. The human battleship's port side lit up as 10 separate weapons. Batteries opened fire simultaneously. These were not the massive mass driver cannon from before. These were plasma lance batteries, human-designed energy weapons that focused superheated plasma into tight beams with devastating cutting power. 10 beams of brilliant blue-white energy lanced across space. Each beam was as thick as a Valkyrie cruiser and burned with the heat of a small star. They crossed the distance between the fleets in an instant. 7 more Valkyrie dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist. The plasma lances cut through their shields and armor like they were paper. Ships were sliced in half, their internal sections exposed to vacuum before massive explosions consumed what remained. 2 other dreadnoughts were hit but not destroyed, their shields collapsing and their hulls scored with massive burn scars that vented atmosphere and crew into space. In less than 10 seconds, the Valkyrie had lost 8 of their 15 dreadnoughts. "Pull back! Pull back!" Kethron was shouting now, his composure cracking. "All ships scatter. Do not maintain formation. Evasive maneuvers." But scattering was exactly what Chen wanted them to do. A compact formation, even one taking heavy losses, could still concentrate fire and potentially overwhelm even the Eternal Resolve's powerful shields, given enough time. A scattered fleet was just individual targets waiting to be eliminated. "They are breaking formation," Mitchell reported. "Orders, Captain?" "Deploy the Javelin frigates," Chen ordered. Along the Eternal Resolve's flanks, massive launch bays opened. From within, smaller ships emerged. The Valkyrie sensors immediately flagged them as frigates based on their size, but even these smaller vessels were larger than Valkyrie destroyers. There were 20 of them, and they moved with a speed and agility that seemed impossible for ships of their mass. The Javelin-class frigates were humanity's fast attack craft. Each one was armed with torpedo systems, rapid-fire plasma cannons, and their own shield generators. They scattered across the battlefield like a pack of wolves, targeting the fleeing Valkyrie ships. A Valkyrie cruiser tried to run, pushing its engines to maximum. A Javelin frigate pursued with casual ease, closing the distance in seconds. The frigate fired a single torpedo. The weapon was not like the slow-moving missiles the Valkyrie used. This was a supercavitating plasma torpedo that created its own bubble in space-time, allowing it to travel at speeds approaching light speed. The torpedo struck the fleeing cruiser's engines. The explosion was devastating. The entire rear section of the ship vaporized, and the momentum carried the front section forward, tumbling and trailing debris. This scene repeated itself across the battlefield. Wherever Valkyrie ships fled, human frigates hunted them down. The speed difference was so great that escape was impossible. The Valkyrie weapons could barely track the human ships, let alone hit them. Commander Velexis was crying now, tears streaming down her scaled face as she watched her fleet being systematically destroyed. "We have lost 90 ships," she reported, her voice hollow. 90 ships in less than 10 minutes. "My lord, we must retreat. We must get word back to the Dominion." But Kethron was staring at the main screen, watching as another cruiser exploded. His mind had finally accepted what his pride had refused to see. This was not a battle. This was an execution. "How?" he asked quietly. Thelvar, who had been silent throughout the engagement, finally spoke. "Because we assumed they were like us, my lord. We assumed they reached space recently, and were therefore primitive. But what if they did not reach space recently? What if they have been spacefaring much longer than we realized, and the signals we intercepted were from their expansion, not their origin?" "It does not matter now," Kethron said, his voice dead. "Open a channel to the human ship. Wide broadcast. Let them all hear." The communication system activated. Kethron's voice, once so proud and commanding, now carried the weight of defeat. "Human vessel Eternal Resolve, this is Admiral Kethron of the Valkyrie Dominion. We surrender. Cease fire. Please, cease fire. We yield." On the Eternal Resolve's bridge, Chen raised her hand. "All units. Cease fire. Hold positions." The battlefield fell silent. The human ships stopped their pursuit, though they remained between the Valkyrie fleet and any potential escape routes. Debris from destroyed ships drifted through space, along with the bodies of thousands of Valkyrie crew members. Chen activated her communication system. Admiral Kethron, your surrender is accepted. You and your fleet will remain in this system. You will power down all weapons systems and submit to boarding parties. Any ship that attempts to flee will be destroyed. Any act of aggression will result in the immediate destruction of your flagship. Is this understood? Yes, Kethron replied, his voice barely audible. It is understood. Good. One more thing, Admiral. You attacked New Aberdeen. You killed 42 human civilians, including 8 children. I want you to understand something very clearly. This demonstration you have witnessed today represents a tiny fraction of humanity's military capability. The Eternal Resolve is 40 years old. We have newer ships, bigger ships. Every human colony is protected by defense platforms that could reduce your homeworld to asteroid fragments. Every human citizen is considered sacred, and their deaths demand justice. Chen's voice grew colder. You came to our space believing you were predators. You thought we were prey. You learned today that you are neither. You are a warning. You will return to your dominion, and you will tell them what happened here. The line cut off, leaving Kethron standing on his bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of his pride. Around him, his crew worked in silence to comply with the human demands, powering down weapons and preparing for boarding. Thelvar approached the Admiral one last time. My lord, perhaps this is for the best. We will survive to carry this knowledge home. The Dominion must know what we face. Kethron nodded slowly, staring at the image of the Eternal Resolve on his screen. The massive battleship hung in space like a monument to human power, its black hull seeming to absorb all light and hope. In that moment, Kethron said quietly, when I first saw that ship, I knew our destruction was inevitable. I simply refused to believe it. I convinced myself that size did not matter, that our numbers would prevail. But I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. He turned away from the screen, unable to look at it any longer. Prepare the fleet for boarding. We done to do them, and pray that the humans are more merciful than we would have been in their position. The boarding craft that approached the Valkyrie flagship did not look like any shuttle the aliens had seen before. It was angular and heavily armored, with weapon mounts visible along its hull. As it approached, the Valkyrie crew could see human soldiers through the reinforced viewports, and what they saw made their blood run cold. The humans were encased in powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. The armor was matte black, with glowing blue lights along the joints and chest pieces. Each suit stood over 7 feet tall, adding bulk and height to the already intimidating human warriors inside. Weapon systems were integrated into the armor itself, and the helmets featured glowing visors that gave the soldiers an inhuman, almost demonic appearance. Security Chief Korval met the boarding party at the airlock, as protocol demanded. He had ordered his guards to leave their weapons behind. There was no point in pretending they could offer resistance. When the airlock opened and the human soldiers stepped through, Korval had to consciously prevent himself from stepping backward. The lead human, identified by slightly different markings on his armor, approached Korval. When he spoke, his voice came through external speakers on the helmet, deep and resonant. I am Sergeant Marcus Reynolds, United Human Marine Corps. You will take me to your command deck immediately. Any delay or deception will be considered an act of hostility. Korval nodded quickly. Of course. This way. We will not resist. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Korval noticed how the human soldiers moved. Despite their size and the obvious weight of their armor, they moved with fluid grace and perfect coordination. Their weapons, massive rifles that looked like they could punch through bulkheads, were held with casual competence. These were not ceremonial guards. These were warriors who had seen real combat. The journey to the command deck took 15 minutes. During that time, Korval noticed other human boarding parties moving through the ship. They were setting up equipment, scanning systems, and cataloging everything. It was methodical and professional. They were not looting or destroying. They were documenting. On the command deck, Admiral Kethron stood waiting with his senior staff. Thelvar was beside him, as was Commander Velgzis. The human soldiers fanned out across the deck, taking up positions that gave them clear fields of fire while also allowing them to monitor all entrances. Sergeant Reynolds approached Kethron directly. "Admiral Kethron, I am authorized to inform you that this vessel and your entire fleet are now under the custody of the United Human Space Forces. You and your senior staff will be transported to the Eternal Resolve for formal processing. Your crew will remain aboard their vessels under Marine Guard." Kethron managed to maintain some dignity despite the situation. "I understand, Sergeant. We will comply. May I ask what will happen to my crew?" "They will be treated according to the Terran Convention on Military Prisoners," Reynolds replied. "They will be housed, fed, and given medical care as needed. They will not be harmed unless they attempt violence. When diplomatic arrangements are complete, they will be returned to Velkari space, along with your vessels." "And us?" Thelvar asked, gesturing to the senior staff. "You will be interviewed regarding your military capabilities, force dispositions, and strategic intentions. You will be treated fairly, but you will answer questions. After that, you will be returned to your government, along with a formal declaration of war and a list of terms for peace." Velxis could not contain her bitterness. "You destroyed nearly a third of our fleet in minutes. What more do you want from us?" Reynolds turned his helmeted head toward her. "We want you to understand. We want your government to understand. We want every species in this region of space to understand that humanity is not to be trifled with. You attacked civilians. That demands a response. But we are not monsters. We could have destroyed your entire fleet. We could have killed every one of you. We chose not to. Remember that." The admiral and his staff were escorted to the boarding craft. As they lifted off from the flagship, Kethron looked out the viewport at his fleet. Human ships were everywhere now, frigates and smaller craft moving between the Velkari vessels. He could see Marines boarding each ship, taking control with the same efficient professionalism. The journey to the Eternal Resolve took only a few minutes. But for Kethron, it felt much longer. As they approached the massive human battleship, the sheer scale of it became even more apparent. The boarding craft was heading toward one of the smaller docking bays, and even that bay was enormous, large enough to hold several Velkari destroyers. They landed in a bay that was spotlessly clean and precisely organized. Human crew members moved about their duties with practiced efficiency. Equipment was stowed properly. Safety markings were clearly visible. Everything spoke of discipline and order. More Marines met them at the landing pad, along with a human woman in a different uniform. She was smaller than the Marines, lacking their powered armor, but she carried herself with authority. Her uniform was dark blue with gold insignia, and her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun. "Admiral Kethron, I am Commander Sarah Mitchell, Executive Officer of the Eternal Resolve. You will follow me to the interview chambers. Your staff will be housed separately. You will be treated with respect, but any attempt at escape or violence will be dealt with severely. Are we clear?" "We are clear," Kethron replied. Mitchell led them deeper into the ship. The corridors were wide and well lit, with clearly marked signs in human script. They passed crew members who glanced at the Velkari prisoners with curiosity, but no hostility. The ship felt alive, humming with power and purpose. After several minutes of walking, they reached a section marked as Interview and Detention. It was not a brig in the traditional sense. The rooms they were shown to were small but clean, with sleeping platforms, sanitation facilities, and even small view screens. They were clearly cells, but they were not cruel. Kethron was shown to a larger room, presumably because of his rank. Mitchell paused at the door. "Captain Chen will meet with you shortly. In the meantime, you have access to food and water through the panel on the wall. The selection includes items compatible with Velkari biology. If you have any medical needs, inform the guard." She left, and Kethron was alone for the first time since the battle. He sat on the sleeping platform, his body feeling heavy with exhaustion and defeat. How had it come to this? How had he led 300 ships into such a catastrophic engagement? An hour later, the door opened. Captain Elizabeth Chen entered, followed by Commander Mitchell. Chen was smaller than Kethron expected. She stood perhaps 5.5 feet tall, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She wore the same dark blue uniform as Mitchell, with insignia that marked her as the ship's commander. She sat across from Kethron, studying him for a moment before speaking. "Admiral, I am Captain Chen. Before we begin, I want to clarify something. This is not an interrogation. This is a conversation. You are not being tortured or threatened. But I need information, and you are going to provide it." Kethron met her gaze. "And if I refuse, then you will sit in this room for however long it takes for you to change your mind," Chen replied calmly. "But I do not think you will refuse. You attacked us because you thought we were weak. You learned otherwise. Now, you have an opportunity to prevent further bloodshed by helping your government understand what they are dealing with." She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about the Velkari Dominion. How large is it? How many ships do you have? What other species have you conquered?" Kethron considered his options. He could refuse, but Chen was right. What purpose would it serve? The humans had demonstrated overwhelming military superiority. If they wanted to destroy the Dominion, they probably could. Perhaps honest communication was the only way to prevent total war. "The Dominion controls 317 systems," he began slowly. "We have a total military force of approximately 4,000 warships, though most are smaller vessels like destroyers and frigates. We have 47 species under our rule, most of them conquered within the last 2 centuries. Chen made notes on a tablet. "How did you conquer them? What was your strategy?" "Overwhelming force and intimidation," Kethron admitted. "We would arrive with large fleets, demonstrate our power, and offer terms. Most species surrendered, rather than face destruction. Those who resisted were defeated through attrition. We have never faced an enemy with technological superiority. Until now," Mitchell added quietly. "Until now," Kethron agreed. "Captain Chen, may I ask you something?" "You may ask. I will decide if I answer. How long has humanity been spacefaring?" "Truly? Our intelligence suggested you were a young species, new to the stars. But your technology, it is far beyond anything we have encountered." Chen smiled slightly. "Our intelligence suggested you thought that. It worked in our favor. Humanity has been traveling space for almost 300 years. As your initial assessment indicated, what you failed to understand is what those 300 years involved." She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years, Admiral. We perfected warfare long before we reached space. We fought with sticks and stones, then bronze and iron, then gunpowder and nuclear weapons. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. When we finally reached space, we brought all that knowledge, all that terrible expertise with us." Chen turned back to face Kethron. "We spent the first century in space fighting among ourselves. Nation against nation. Corporation against corporation. Ideology against ideology. We fought in asteroid belts and around gas giants. We learned how to wage war in 3 dimensions across vast distances. We developed weapons and tactics specifically designed for space combat. Only in the last century did we finally unite as a species." "So you have been preparing for war this entire time?" Kethron said, understanding dawning. "We have been preparing for anything," Chen corrected. "When we finally ventured beyond our local systems and began encountering other species, we made a collective decision. We would seek peace, we would offer friendship and cooperation. But we would never, ever be vulnerable. Every colony is defended. Every ship is armed. Every human citizen knows that their military will respond to threats with overwhelming force." Mitchell added, "The Eternal Resolve is 40 years old, as the captain told you. It is scheduled for decommissioning in 5 years. We have newer battleships now, bigger and more powerful. We have carriers that deploy fighter wings capable of taking on entire fleets. We have planet-side defense platforms that can create energy shields around entire worlds. And all of this is just what we will tell you about." Kethron felt a chill run through him. "You are saying that what you showed us today was restrained?" "We used approximately 7% of this ship's weapons capacity," Chen confirmed. "We deployed 20 frigates when we have hangar space for 100. We used our oldest and most basic tactics, and we still destroyed a third of your fleet in minutes." She sat back down, her expression serious. "I am not telling you this to be cruel, Admiral. I am telling you this because I need you to carry a message back to your government. Humanity does not want war with the Velkhari Dominion. We do not want to conquer your worlds or subjugate your people. But we will not tolerate attacks on our civilians. You crossed a line at New Aberdeen. People died because of your decision." "I understand," Kethron said quietly. "What are your terms?" "You will return to your government with a full report of what happened here. You will include tactical data showing the engagement, sensor logs, everything. You will make it clear that resistance is futile. Then your government will receive our official demands." Chen pulled up a document on her tablet and displayed it so Kethron could read. "First, the Velkhari Dominion will formally apologize for the attack on New Aberdeen and pay reparations to the families of those killed. Second, the Dominion will immediately cease all military expansion and withdraw from any systems where indigenous species are resisting your rule. Third, you will release detailed information on all species under your control, their locations, and their status. Fourth, you will agree to human observers being stationed in your territory to ensure compliance with these terms." "And if we refuse?" Kethron asked. "Then we will enforce these terms militarily," Chen said simply. "We will blockade your worlds. We will destroy your military infrastructure. We will not kill civilians if we can avoid it. But we will cripple your ability to wage war. And if your government is particularly foolish, we will remove them and install a new one that is willing to cooperate." The Admiral closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his failure. He had destroyed so much with his arrogance. His fleet was scattered and captured. His people would face the consequences of his hubris. And the Dominion, the mighty Velkhari Dominion that had conquered dozens of species, was now at the mercy of humans. "I will deliver your message," he said finally. "I will tell them everything. I will recommend immediate compliance with your terms." "Good." Chen stood. "You will be held here until we establish contact with your government. Your crew is safe, as I promised. Once diplomatic channels are open, you and your ships will be returned. But remember this, Admiral, we are being merciful because we choose to be. Do not mistake mercy for weakness. Do not test us again." She left with Mitchell, and Kethron was alone once more. He looked out the viewport at the stars, wondering how he would explain this to the Dominion Council. How could he make them understand that they had encountered a species so far beyond their capabilities that resistance was meaningless? In another part of the ship, Thelvar was having a similar conversation with human intelligence officers. He was providing detailed information about Dominion structure, military deployments, and political leadership. Unlike Kethron, Thelvar felt a strange sense of relief. Perhaps this was what the galaxy needed. Perhaps the Dominion's age of conquest was over, and something better could rise in its place. 3 days passed aboard the Eternal Resolve before the communication channels with the Velkhari Dominion were finally established. During that time, Admiral Kethron and his senior officers were treated well, as promised. They were fed, allowed to rest, and given access to basic amenities, but they remained prisoners, and the weight of that reality pressed down on them constantly. On the 4th day, Commander Mitchell came to Kethron's quarters. "Admiral, we have established contact with your government. The Dominion Council wishes to speak with you. Captain Chen will be present during the conversation, along with human diplomatic staff. You will be allowed to give your report, but we will be monitoring everything said." Kethron followed Mitchell to a communications room. It was a large space with a central holographic projector and several observation stations. Captain Chen was already there, along with 2 other humans in different uniforms. One was a woman with gray hair and formal diplomatic attire. The other was a man in military uniform with more elaborate insignia than Chen wore. "Admiral Kethron," the woman said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I am Ambassador Sarah Martinez, representing the United Human Government. This is Admiral Marcus Wright, commander of the Human Third Fleet." Kethron recognized the name. Wright was the human who had sent the warning before the Eternal Resolve arrived. He was taller than Chen, with short gray hair and a weathered face that spoke of long years in military service. His eyes were hard and calculating. "The connection is ready," a technician announced. The holographic projector activated, and suddenly the room was filled with the images of the Velkari Dominion Council. There were 7 of them, representing the 7 major clan families that ruled the Dominion. Supreme Counselor Varthek sat at the center, his golden scales marking him as the highest authority. His face showed barely controlled rage. "Kethron," Varthek's voice boomed through the speakers. "You were sent, with 327 ships, to secure a handful of primitive colonies. Instead, you have allowed over 100 vessels to be destroyed, and the remainder captured. Explain yourself." Kethron felt his shame deepen, but he forced himself to speak clearly. "Supreme Counselor, honored council members, what I am about to report will sound impossible. I ask that you review the tactical data we are transmitting alongside this conversation. The species we encountered is not primitive. They are far more advanced than any species the Dominion has ever faced." He took a breath and continued. "The humans sent a single ship to engage our fleet. That ship, the Eternal Resolve, is larger than one of our city stations. Its weapons destroyed 8 of our dreadnoughts in the first exchange. Its shields absorbed our entire fleet's bombardment without taking damage. When we attempted to flee, they deployed smaller vessels that hunted down our ships with ease. The battle lasted less than 15 minutes before I surrendered to prevent total annihilation." The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Councilors shouted over each other, demanding explanations, calling Kethron a coward and a liar. Only Varthek remained silent, his eyes fixed on Kethron with an intensity that was somehow more frightening than the other's anger. Finally, Varthek raised one hand, and the chamber fell silent. "You claim a single ship defeated our fleet? Kethron, I have known you for 40 years. You have never been a coward, so I will not immediately assume you are lying. But you must understand how incredible this sounds." "I understand, Supreme Counselor," Kethron replied. "That is why I am transmitting full tactical data. Sensor logs, visual recordings, everything. Review it, and you will see that I speak the truth." Ambassador Martinez stepped forward. "Supreme Counselor, I am Ambassador Sarah Martinez of the United Human Government. I am here to deliver a formal message to the Velkari Dominion. Your forces attacked a human civilian colony without provocation. This constitutes an act of war. However, humanity does not wish for further conflict if it can be avoided." Varthek's attention shifted to Martinez. "And what do you want, human ambassador?" "We want peace," Martinez said simply. "But peace on our terms. Your admiral has been given a list of requirements. They are non-negotiable. If you comply, we will return your ships and your people. If you refuse, we will enforce compliance through military action." Another counselor, a female named Silvara, spoke up. "You speak boldly for a species we have never heard of until recently. Even if your story is true, even if you have one powerful ship, the Dominion has thousands of vessels. We have conquered 47 species. We control hundreds of worlds. You cannot threaten us." Admiral Wright stepped forward at this. His voice was cold and hard as steel. "Counselor, let me be very clear. The Eternal Resolve is one ship. One of many. Humanity has 32 battleships of similar or greater capability. We have 200 cruisers, over 1,000 frigates, and countless smaller vessels. We have defense platforms protecting every colony, weapons, satellites, and automated defense systems. We have been preparing for war since before your species achieved spaceflight." He activated a holographic display showing various human military assets. Ships of different sizes and designs appeared, rotating slowly for the council to see. "This is the Indomitable, our newest battleship class. It is twice the size of the Eternal Resolve, with 4 times the firepower. This is the Carrier Endeavor, which deploys 300 fighter craft, each one capable of destroying ships the size of your cruisers. These are our orbital defense platforms, which can create energy shields strong enough to protect entire planets from bombardment. The council watched in silence as the display continued. Finally, Varthek spoke again, his voice much quieter now. If what you show us is real, then war between our peoples would be catastrophic for the Dominion. It would, Wright agreed. Which is why we are offering you a choice. Accept our terms, which are actually quite reasonable given the circumstances, or face military action. We do not want to destroy the Dominion. We do not want to kill your people. But we will not allow attacks on human civilians to go unpunished, and we will not tolerate aggressive expansion by any species in this region of space. Martinez took over again, her tone more diplomatic. Let me outline our requirements once more. First, formal apology and reparations for the New Aberdeen attack. Second, cessation of military expansion and withdrawal from systems where you are actively conquering indigenous species. Third, detailed information on all species under your control so we can assess their situations. Fourth, acceptance of human observers to ensure compliance. In return, she continued, we offer you peace. We will not attack your core worlds. We will not interfere with your internal governance. We will even offer trade agreements and technology exchanges, provided you demonstrate good faith. Think of this not as defeat, but as an opportunity to transform the Dominion into something better. Councillor Silvara looked like she wanted to argue, but Varthek silenced her with a gesture. The Supreme Councillor studied the humans for a long moment, then turned his attention back to Kethron. Admiral, you have served the Dominion faithfully for your entire life. I need your honest assessment. If we refuse these terms and go to war with humanity, what is the likely outcome? 2. Kethron met his leader's gaze directly. Supreme Councillor, I watched our finest ships torn apart like they were made of paper. I saw weapons that make our most advanced systems look primitive. I stood aboard a human battleship that could house our entire population of Capital City inside its hull, and they told me, directly, that all of this represents old technology, that they have newer and more powerful weapons they did not even deploy against us. He paused, gathering his courage. If we go to war with humanity, we will lose. Not eventually. Not after a long struggle. We will lose quickly and decisively. They will destroy our fleets, blockade our worlds, and dismantle our military infrastructure. They might be merciful and spare civilians, or they might not. But the Dominion as we know it will cease to exist. The council chamber fell completely silent. Several councillors looked shocked. Others looked angry. Varthek simply looked tired. Admiral Wright, Varthek said, if we were to agree to your terms, how would the process work? Wright's expression softened slightly. First, you would make a formal declaration accepting the peace terms. Then, we would begin the process of returning your captured ships and crews. Human observers would be stationed at agreed-upon locations within your territory. We would establish regular diplomatic contact and begin discussing the specifics of your withdrawal from conquered territories. The withdrawal will take time, Varthek noted. Some of the species we control have no functional government of their own anymore. Simply abandoning them would cause chaos. We understand that, Martinez said. We are not asking you to create chaos. We are asking you to begin a process of decolonization. Work with the species under your control to establish independent governments. We will provide assistance if needed. The goal is not to punish the Dominion, but to create a more stable and peaceful region of space. Thelvar had been brought to the communications room as well, standing in the background. Now he stepped forward. Supreme Councillor, may I speak? Varthek looked surprised but nodded. I have spent the last 3 days talking with human diplomatic staff, Thelvar said. I have learned much about their history and their philosophy. They are not conquerors. They do not seek to dominate others. But they are absolutely committed to protecting their own people and preventing others from aggressive expansion. What they offer us is not surrender, but transformation. The Dominion could become a legitimate government respected by other species, rather than an empire maintained by fear. End quote. Silvara interrupted. You speak as if you have been converted to their cause. Thelvar. Have you forgotten your loyalty to the Dominion? I have not forgotten. Thelvar replied calmly. I am thinking of what is best for our people. Continuing our current path will lead to war with humanity. And we will lose. Accepting their terms gives us a chance to survive, and perhaps even prosper. Varthek raised his hand again, silencing the brewing argument. He looked at each of his fellow counselors in turn, then back at the humans. We will need time to discuss this among ourselves. Give us one cycle to deliberate, and we will provide our answer. 24 hours, Wright said. You have 24 hours. If we do not receive an acceptable response in that time, we will assume you have chosen war. And we will act accordingly. The connection terminated, leaving the humans and their Velkhari prisoners in the communications room. Kethron felt drained, as if the weight of the entire conversation had been pressing down on him physically. Captain Chen approached him. You gave them good advice, Admiral. Let us hope they are wise enough to take it. If they are not, Kethron asked quietly, then a lot of people on both sides will die unnecessarily. Chen replied. War is always wasteful. It solves problems through destruction rather than construction. But if your government forces our hand, we will do what we must. The next 24 hours were the longest of Kethron's life. He was returned to his quarters, where he could do nothing but wait and think about what would happen. Would the Council accept the terms? Or would pride and tradition drive them to reject humanity's offer? He thought about his family back on the homeworld. His mate, his offspring, his clan brothers. If war came, would they be safe? The humans claimed they did not target civilians, but war had a way of spreading destruction, far beyond military targets. He thought about the 47 species under Dominion control. Many of them had been conquered during his career. He had led fleets that destroyed their defenses and forced their surrender. He had believed, truly believed, that he was bringing them into a greater civilization. Now, he wondered if he had simply been a tool of oppression. Finally, with just 1 hour remaining in the deadline, Commander Mitchell came to his quarters. Admiral, the Council has transmitted their response. Captain Chen wants you present when we review it. Kethron followed her back to the communications room. The human command staff was already assembled. Captain Chen stood at the center, reading from a data tablet. She looked up as Kethron entered. Your council has accepted our terms, she announced. The Dominion formally apologizes for the attack on New Aberdeen and agrees to pay reparations. They commit to ceasing military expansion and beginning a process of decolonization. They agree to human observers and diplomatic presence within Dominion space. Kethron felt relief wash over him. They agreed to everything? There are some caveats and requests for clarifications, Ambassador Martinez said, stepping forward with her own tablet. They want to negotiate the specific timeline for withdrawal from various systems. They want assurances about non-interference in their internal affairs. They want to discuss the scope and authority of human observers. But the core elements are accepted. This is good news, Admiral Wright said. It means we can avoid further bloodshed. Admiral Kethron, your ships will be returned to you within the week. Your crews will be released. You and your senior staff will be transported back to Dominion space, along with our diplomatic team, to begin formal negotiations. Kethron bowed his head in acknowledgement. Thank you, Admiral. And I am sorry for what happened at New Aberdeen. It was wrong. Chen walked over to stand in front of him. Admiral, war makes monsters of us all sometimes. What matters is what we do after. You convinced your council to choose peace. That took courage. Remember that. Over the next several days, preparations were made for the return of the Velkhari fleet. Human Marines withdrew from the captured ships, leaving them under the control of their original crews. Supplies were provided, repairs were made to damaged vessels, and detailed instructions were given for the journey home. The day before departure, Kethron was given a tour of the Eternal Resolve by Captain Chen herself. She showed him the massive hangar bays, the engineering sections that powered the great ship, the weapons batteries that had destroyed his fleet so easily. She wanted him to truly understand what he was dealing with. "This ship is scheduled to be decommissioned," Chen told him as they stood in one of the observation decks, looking out at the fleet of Valkyrie vessels preparing to depart. "In 5 years, it will be retired and eventually dismantled. We will replace it with newer designs." That is how quickly human military technology advances. "A sobering thought," Kethron replied. "Captain, may I ask you something personal?" "You may ask. Do you enjoy this? The power? The ability to destroy any enemy with ease?" Chen was quiet for a moment. "No, Admiral. I do not enjoy it. I am a soldier because someone needs to be. I command this ship because I am good at it, but I would much rather live in a universe where such weapons were unnecessary. Every time I give the order to fire, every time lives are lost because of my decisions. It weighs on me. War is not glorious. It is necessary sometimes, but it is never glorious." She turned to face him directly. "That is why we try so hard to avoid it. That is why we offered your council terms, rather than simply destroying the Dominion. We have the power to wage war effectively, but we have the wisdom to prefer peace." Kethron nodded slowly. "I am beginning to understand that. Perhaps there is something the Dominion can learn from humanity after all." 6 months had passed since the Battle of New Aberdeen, as it came to be known throughout the galaxy. The news of what happened had spread far beyond the Valkyrie Dominion, carried by traders, refugees, and spies. Every species in the region now knew about humanity and their overwhelming military power. On the Valkyrie homeworld, in the Grand Council chambers where the fate of an empire was decided, Thelvar stood before the assembled leadership. He had been given a new role after the incident, appointed as the Dominion's chief ambassador to humanity. It was a position that carried great weight and responsibility. And today, he was delivering his quarterly report. "The decolonization process continues," Thelvar reported, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We have successfully negotiated independence agreements with 17 of the 47 species under former Dominion control. Another 12 are in active negotiations. The human observers report satisfaction with our progress." Supreme Counselor Varthek listened from his elevated seat, his expression thoughtful. The past 6 months had aged him visibly. The stress of transforming an empire built on conquest into something else entirely had taken its toll. "And what of the species, who are not yet ready for full independence? We are working with human advisors to establish transitional governments," Thelvar explained. "In some cases, we are providing economic aid and technical assistance to help them build the infrastructure they need to govern themselves. The humans have been surprisingly helpful in this process, offering their own expertise and resources." Counselor Silvera, who had opposed accepting human terms from the beginning, spoke up. "We provide aid to species we once ruled over. We reduce our territory and our influence. We allow human observers to move freely through our space." "Ambassador, does this not strike you as humiliating?" "Oh," Thelvar met her gaze steadily. "What I find humiliating, Counselor, is that we ever thought ruling other species through force was honorable. What I find humiliating is that it took a military defeat to make us examine our actions. The humans are not our conquerors. They are not occupying our worlds or dictating our internal policies. They simply insisted we stop oppressing others. Is that really so unreasonable?" Before Silvara could respond, Varthek raised his hand. "Enough. Ambassador Thelvar, continue your report. What news from the broader galactic community?" Thelvar pulled up a holographic display showing the local star systems. "That is perhaps the most significant development, Supreme Counselor. News of humanity's military capabilities has spread throughout the region. Several aggressive species have immediately halted their expansion plans. The Kryn hegemony, which was preparing to invade the Solari systems, has withdrawn their fleets entirely. The Thovian raiders have ceased their attacks on merchant vessels. Everyone is afraid of drawing human attention." He highlighted several systems on the display. "More significantly, 12 species have formally requested human protection. They have asked for defense agreements, for human military presence in their space, for the security that comes from being under humanity's umbrella. The humans have been selective in their responses, but they have accepted several of these requests. Admiral Kethron, who now served as military advisor to the Council, added his perspective. The strategic implications are enormous. Within 6 months, humanity has become the dominant military power in this entire region of space. And they achieved it without fighting another battle. After New Aberdeen, they have created a new order simply through reputation. Varthek stood and walked to the holographic display, studying it carefully. And what do the humans want from this new order? What is their ultimate goal? They call it the Coalition for Peaceful Cooperation, Thelvar said. It is not an empire. Each species maintains its sovereignty and independence. But member species agree to certain principles. No aggressive expansion, peaceful resolution of disputes, mutual defense against external threats, and free trade between members. The humans provide military protection and technological assistance in exchange for species agreeing to these principles. And they want us to join this coalition? Silvara asked skeptically. Eventually, yes, Thelvar confirmed. But first we must complete the decolonization process and demonstrate our commitment to peace. The humans are patient. They have made it clear that the coalition is voluntary. No one will be forced to join. But the benefits of membership are significant. Kethron pulled up tactical data. From a military perspective, joining the coalition would actually strengthen our security. We would have access to human military technology through trade agreements. We would be protected by their defense network. And we would no longer need to maintain such large military forces, which would free up enormous economic resources for other purposes. Varthek returned to his seat, his expression contemplative. 6 months ago, I would have rejected such an arrangement as unacceptable. The proud Velkari Dominion, joining a coalition led by a species we had never heard of, it would have seemed like surrender. But I am older now, perhaps wiser. Tell me honestly, Ambassador, what is your recommendation? Thelvar took a deep breath. Supreme Counselor, honored council members, I have spent the last 6 months working closely with human diplomatic and military personnel. I have visited their colonies, studied their government, and observed how they interact with other species. What I have learned is that humanity is not interested in empire. They genuinely want to create a peaceful and stable region of space. He gestured to the display. Look at what has happened in just 6 months. Aggressive expansion has stopped. Piracy has decreased. Trade is increasing. Species that were mortal enemies are now in negotiations because humans are mediating their disputes. The humans have brought order to chaos, and they did it not through conquest, but through strength, combined with restraint. My recommendation, Thelvar continued, is that we embrace this new reality. We complete the decolonization process with full commitment. We apply to join the coalition as soon as we are eligible. We transform the Dominion from an empire built on conquest into a legitimate government that other species respect. This is not defeat. This is evolution. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some councillors supported Thelvar's recommendation enthusiastically. Others remained skeptical. The debate continued for hours, with passionate arguments on both sides. Finally, Varthek called for order. We will not decide this today, but we will continue moving forward with the decolonization process. We will maintain positive relations with humanity, and we will keep the option of coalition membership under serious consideration. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, in the human colony on New Aberdeen that had been attacked 6 months ago, reconstruction was nearly complete. The orbital processing stations had been rebuilt, better than before. The colony had received additional defensive platforms to ensure such an attack could never happen again. In the colony's central administration building, Governor Patricia Morrison met with Captain Elizabeth Chen, who had taken personal interest in the colony's recovery. Chen had visited several times over the past months, checking on the reconstruction and meeting with the families of those who had died in the attack. The memorial will be completed next week, Morrison said, showing Chen the plans. 42 names engraved in stone, with a view of the stars they lived and died under. It is important that we remember. Chen studied the memorial design with approval. It is important. And it is important that the rest of humanity remembers too. What happened here was not your fault, Governor, but it was the spark that changed everything. Do you ever wonder if we overreacted? Morrison asked quietly. The Velkhari killed 42 people, and we responded by destroying over 100 of their ships. Was that proportional? We destroyed ships, not cities, Chen replied. We gave them every opportunity to surrender. And more importantly, our response sent a message that has prevented further violence. How many lives have been saved because other aggressive species now think twice before attacking anyone? The Kryn hegemony was preparing to invade the Solari systems. That would have killed millions, but they called off the invasion. Because they saw what happened here. She turned to face Morrison directly. Governor, I cannot speak for every human or every decision our government makes, but I can tell you that the policy we followed was not about revenge. It was about establishing a clear boundary. We will not tolerate attacks on civilians. We will respond with overwhelming force. But we will also show mercy to those who surrender and work with us toward peace. That combination of strength and restraint is what has created this new stability. Morrison nodded slowly. I suppose you are right. It is just hard sometimes. Knowing that so much came from such tragedy here. That is the nature of turning points, Chen said. They often come from tragedy. But what matters is what we build from them. In another part of the galaxy, on a space station that served as the headquarters for the newly formed Coalition for Peaceful Cooperation, Ambassador Sarah Martinez presided over a meeting of representatives from 23 different species. It was a chaotic gathering, with beings of wildly different appearances and communication styles, all trying to work together. A representative of the Solari, a species of crystalline beings who communicated through light patterns, was speaking through a translation device. We formally request admission to the Coalition. Our worlds are vulnerable to larger, aggressive species. We need the protection that membership would provide. End quote. A Kryn representative, whose species had been one of those aggressive powers before learning about humanity, interjected. The Solari were a target of our expansion plans before we learned of human military capabilities. We formally withdraw all territorial claims to their systems and support their admission to the Coalition. Martinez made notes on her tablet. The Solari application will be reviewed by the Coalition Council. As you know, admission requires agreement from a majority of current members and a commitment to the Coalition Charter. The process typically takes several weeks. A representative from a small species called the Vex spoke up, their voice nervous. Ambassador Martinez, what happens if a species outside the Coalition attacks one of our worlds? Will humanity really come to our defense? Yes, Martinez said simply. That is the core promise of the Coalition. An attack on any member is treated as an attack on all members. Humanity has committed significant military resources to Coalition defense. We have deployed defense platforms, patrol vessels, and rapid response fleets throughout Coalition space. Admiral Wright, who was also present at the meeting, added context. Let me be very clear to everyone here. The Coalition is not a human empire with a fancy name. We do not control your governments. We do not dictate your internal policies. What we do is provide collective security and facilitate cooperation between members. Each species maintains its sovereignty completely. But you are the dominant military power, another representative noted. Does that not give you disproportionate influence? Of course it does, Wright admitted bluntly. Military power always confers political influence. We are not going to pretend otherwise. But influence is not the same as control. Yes, when there are disputes, our opinion carries weight. Yes, when there are threats, we are the ones who respond most effectively. But we have worked hard to build a system where smaller species have a voice and where decisions are made collectively when possible. A Velkhari observer, not yet a full member but present as part of their rehabilitation process, spoke from the back of the chamber. Ambassador Martinez, Admiral Wright, my government has asked me to inquire about the timeline for our potential admission to the Coalition. We are completing the decolonization process and wish to know what steps remain. Martinez consulted her notes. The Velkhari Dominion has made excellent progress. 17 species have achieved independence, with more on the way. Human observers report genuine commitment to the process. Once decolonization is complete and a probationary period is satisfied, your application for membership will be seriously considered. I would estimate perhaps 2 more years before admission is realistic. 2 years, the Valkyrie observer repeated. That seems both a long time and surprisingly short, given what we did. It is a fair timeline, Wright said. You are demonstrating real change. That matters more than speed. The coalition wants members who are genuinely committed to peace, not those who are simply afraid of human military power. The meeting continued for several more hours, addressing various issues of trade, security, and cooperation. It was exhausting work, but Martinez found it deeply satisfying. This was what she had dedicated her career to, building a system that could prevent wars rather than just fighting them. As the meeting ended and representatives departed, Wright approached Martinez. You know, Sarah, 6 months ago I was preparing for a potential war against the entire Valkyrie Dominion. I thought we would be fighting for years. Instead, we fought one battle and have been building peace ever since. It is remarkable how things turned out. That battle at New Aberdeen was decisive, Martinez agreed. But what made it truly effective was what we did afterward. We did not gloat. We did not demand unconditional surrender. We offered terms that allowed the Valkyrie to maintain their dignity while changing their behavior. That is the key to converting enemies into partners. Wright looked out the viewport at the stars. I wonder what the next challenge will be. The galaxy is a big place. There are other aggressive species out there, other potential threats. We cannot stop them all with just one battle and a reputation. No, Martinez agreed. But we have established a model that works. Strength combined with restraint. Clear boundaries combined with genuine opportunities for cooperation. As long as we maintain that balance, I think we can handle whatever comes. Back on the Eternal Resolve, which continued its patrol duties in the region, Captain Chen received a message from Earth. It was from the United Human Space Forces Command, informing her that the Eternal Resolve had been selected for an extended deployment. Rather than being decommissioned in 5 years as originally planned, the ship would serve as the flagship for coalition operations for at least another decade. Chen read the message with mixed feelings. Part of her had looked forward to retirement, to stepping away from military service and finding a quieter life. But another part of her recognized the importance of what they were building. The Eternal Resolve had become a symbol, not just of human military power, but of humanity's commitment to protecting others. She called Commander Mitchell to her ready room. We have new orders. Extended deployment as coalition flagship. How do you think the crew will take the news? Mitchell smiled. I think most of them will be pleased, Captain. We have become something important. This ship scared the hell out of the Valkyrie, but now it represents security for dozens of species who would otherwise be vulnerable. That is a mission worth extending our service for. I agree, Chen said. Prepare a ship-wide announcement. I will address the crew this evening. That evening, Chen stood on the bridge and activated the internal communication system. Her image and voice were broadcast to every section of the massive ship, reaching the thousands of crew members who kept the Eternal Resolve operational. This is the captain, she began. 6 months ago, we engaged the Valkyrie fleet at New Aberdeen. It was a decisive victory that demonstrated human military superiority and prevented a wider war. But what has happened since that battle is more important than the battle itself. We have helped build something new in this region of space. A coalition of species working together for mutual defense and peaceful cooperation. She paused, looking around the bridge at her officers. I have just received orders extending our deployment. The Eternal Resolve will serve as the coalition flagship for at least 10 more years. I know some of you may have hoped for different assignments, for transfers back to Earth, for an end to long patrol duties. But I am asking you to embrace this mission. We are not just a warship anymore. We are a symbol of what humanity represents. Strength, protection, and the willingness to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. Our presence here prevents wars, she continued. Our reputation stops aggressive species from preying on weaker ones. Our commitment to the coalition creates stability where there was chaos. This is important work. Perhaps the most important work any of us will ever do. I am proud to serve with you. And I am proud of what we have accomplished together. The ship-wide system crackled with applause and cheers from various sections. The crew, it seemed, understood the importance of their mission. On the Valkyrie homeworld, former Admiral Kethron sat in his private quarters, writing in a journal that would later be published and become required reading in Valkyrie schools. He wrote about his experiences, about the battle, about meeting the humans, and about the lessons he had learned. He wrote, "In that moment, when I first saw their battleship, when the eternal resolve dropped out of faster-than-light travel and hung in space before our fleet, like a dark god of war, I knew our destruction was inevitable. I knew that everything we had built, everything we believed about our dominance, was about to be shattered. But I was wrong about what that destruction would mean. Yes, they destroyed our ships. Yes, they shattered our military power and forced us to change our ways. But they did not destroy us as a people. They did not conquer our worlds or enslave our population. Instead, they destroyed our arrogance. They destroyed our belief that might makes right. They destroyed our empire. But in doing so, they gave us the chance to become something better. 6 months later, I look at what the Dominion is becoming, and I feel something I never expected. Hope. We are releasing species we once conquered. We are building relationships based on cooperation, rather than domination. We are learning to be part of a community, rather than rulers of an empire. This transformation is painful, but it is necessary. The humans taught us that true strength is not just the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to show restraint. They could have annihilated us. They chose mercy instead, and in that mercy, they gave us the opportunity to evolve into a civilization we can actually be proud of. He paused in his writing, looking out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the eternal resolve continued its patrol. Somewhere out there, human ships protected species who would otherwise be vulnerable. Somewhere out there, the new order that had begun with one devastating battle continued to grow and strengthen. Kethron returned to his journal and wrote one final entry for the day. They say that history is written by the victors, but sometimes, the truly remarkable victors are those who win not just battles, but the peace that follows. Humanity won both, and in doing so, they changed our entire region of the galaxy. We saw their battleship, and in that moment, we knew our old way of life was ending. What we did not know, what we could not have imagined, was that this ending would be the beginning of something far better. The galaxy continued to turn. Species that had once been enemies began to trade and cooperate. Conflicts that would have led to war were resolved through negotiation. And through it all, the human ships patrolled the space lanes, silent guardians of a peace they had fought one battle to create, and countless diplomatic hours to maintain. The age of conquest in that region of space had ended, not because the conquerors were defeated by someone stronger, though that had certainly happened. It ended because humanity offered something better than endless cycles of domination and rebellion. They offered security, stability, and the chance for species to determine their own futures without fear. And it had all begun with one human battleship dropping out of faster-than-light travel, its massive hull blocking out the stars, its weapons systems primed but restrained, its crew ready for war but hoping for peace. The Valkyrie had glimpsed that ship and known their destruction was clear. What they had not known, could not have known, was that their destruction would be the foundation of their salvation.